Chapter 1, Introduction to Anatomy and Physiology. Characteristics of living things. There are a number of characteristics of living things all share in common. The first is organization. Each organism has discrete boundaries separating it from its environment. Therefore, the internal conditions can often be very different from the external conditions. In our cells, that is the cell plasma membrane that functions that way. Responsiveness. Your cells and your living things can respond to changes in the immediate environment. Very primitive organisms do it just by irritability, where they pull away from something they don't like. But as you get more advanced, you show adaptability, where we make adjustments to deal with the changing in the environment, such as in the winter we put on a coat, in the summer we put on shorts. Those are adapting to the environment. Growth and differentiation. There is always an increase in the number of cells, as well as the cells will grow and become specific types of cells. That is differentiation. They will develop into specific types. Okay. We also have reproduction. All living organisms will reproduce. They're going to produce offspring via meiosis, which is sexual reproduction, and they will produce new cells with a new variation of genetic material, and then those cells would go on to undergo mitosis, which is asexual or cloning, to produce more cells. Number 5 is movement. We have internally, we have transport of food, blood in the body, movement of the cytosol within the cells themselves, and externally we have moving about the environment. And the last is metabolism and excretion. Metabolism is all the chemical reactions occurring in the body at any given time. This is going to require nutrients to produce energy to do those chemical reactions. Respiration, where we need oxygen to help produce the energy, which is ATP. And we also produce a waste product which will be excreted from the body, and we won't want to build that up because it becomes major problems. Anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the study of internal and external structures of the body and the physical relationships among the body parts. Gross anatomy versus microscopic anatomy is that gross is large structures that are visible with the naked eye, and microscopic can't be seen with the naked eye. Under microscopic, we will have cytology, which will be the study of cell structure, and histology, the study of tissues. This is a group of cells that have similar function and structure. Physiology is the study of how organisms' vital functions work, and form will always follow function, which means that the structure of the organ will be determined by the function of the organ. We have a variety of levels of organization. We're going to start with the simplest and build on that to create the human body. The first level of organization is the chemical or molecular level, and this is how our chemicals are going to be put together to make organic macromolecules, which we are going to be made of. Those macromolecules are going to be proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. The next we'll do is a cellular level, where we'll build all parts of the cells from these organic macromolecules. So your cell membrane will be made up of lipids, proteins, and carbohydrates. Moving above the cellular level, we have the tissue level. In this case, we have a group of specialized cells working together, and they will form a variety of tissues. We have 4 different types of tissues in the body: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle, and neural tissue. And then we'll take those tissues, a variety of each one of those 4 subgroups, we'll put them together to make organs. This is the organ level. And an organ would be like your stomach or your heart. Okay, and then we'll take a number of organs that work on a similar function and put it together to make an organ system. This will be similar to like your digestive system, which is consistent of not only your stomach, but your small intestine, your large intestine, and a number of other organs working together. Then we take a number of organ systems, put them together, and make an organism. This is all going to work together to keep this organism healthy. And if one system fails, then it will have a major impact on the organism itself. We have a number of different organ systems within the human body. We have the integumentary, which is your skin, hair, nails, and glands, such as sweat and your oil glands. These are all involved, or majority of them are involved for protection. Then we have the skeletal system, which is bones and joints, movement and protection. Your muscular system, which is your skeletal muscles, and they're involved with movement. Your nervous system, which is the brain, the spinal cord, the nerves, and sense organs for communication. And these first four systems will be covered in Anatomy and Physiology 1. Then we have the endocrine system, which is hormones and their glands, also used for communication. And the cardiovascular system, which is the heart, the blood vessels, and they move blood and oxygen and nutrients to the cells. Other organ systems that we will cover in AMP2 are the lymphatic system, which is a system of lymphatic vessels that parallel your blood vessels, and they pick up and filter excess fluid that has been pushed out of the blood vessels. The respiratory system, which is your lungs for breathing. Your digestive system, which will include your stomach, small and large intestines, and they break down the food and absorb the nutrients. Your urinary system, which is your kidneys and bladder for excretion of nitrogen waste products. Reproduction, males, the testes and the penis to deliver sperm to the egg. And reproduction for the females, the ovaries and uterus, where they unite the sperm and the egg and house a developing offspring. One of the main principles of physiology is to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis means same status, and this is the maintenance of a stable internal environment with minimal fluctuations. It does fluctuate, it'll move up and down a little bit, but it always returns back to a norm. A homeostatic regulation, the adjustment of these physiological systems to preserve homeostasis, has two different types of mechanisms. It can do autoregulation, which is also called intrinsic regulation, and this is when the activation of the cell or the tissue or organ system will adjust automatically in response to the environmental change. This is a type of localized regulation. An example of this would be inflammation. If you get injured, no matter what causes the injury or where the injury is, you will have inflammation occurring. Okay? The second type of mechanism is extrinsic. X means outside of. This is outside of the general area, and this is going to result from the nervous system or the endocrine system responding. So first you're going to have the initial response to local regulation, then you'll have the input from the other systems. Your nervous system will be a quick, short-lived response, and the endocrine will be slower and longer-lived response. And these are going to control the activity of many systems, such as in your fight or flight response. When you're stressed out, it will affect your respiration, your heart rate, your digestion. All those things will be controlled by the extrinsic regulation. Your body temperature will be maintained with homeostasis. With your increase in body temperature will be a stimulus. So something will happen. Receptors, such as thermoreceptors, will detect the increasing body temperature, and they'll send that information to your control center, which is the hypothalamus of the brain. It's a small part of the brain which will analyze the temperature increase, and then it will determine what the body should do for that response. It will then send information to the effectors, which are the sweat glands and blood vessels. Your blood vessels will increase blood flow, and therefore they will dilate, and your skin will become kind of red, bringing that warm blood to the surface. And your sweat glands will start to release sweat to the skin. Now, with the hot blood and the moisture from the sweat, they will cause evaporation, which will decrease the body temperature. If the result was, or if the opposite occurred, the decrease in the body temperature, we would have the same three players: the receptors, the control center, and the effectors. Again, the receptors are going to be thermoreceptors. Your control center is, again, the hypothalamus. The effectors this time will be your skeletal muscles and your blood vessels. Blood vessels will constrict, so they decrease blood flow of that warm blood to the surface, and your skeletal muscles will shiver so that they can produce heat. Okay. These are an example of what's called negative feedback. A negative feedback system will be when a variation occurs outside the desired range, it will trigger an automatic response to correct that situation or negate it, make it go the opposite way. So if your body temperature is raising, the response is going to be to decrease. If your body temperature is decreasing too much, the response is going to be to try to increase her. And these are going to be the result of the effectors. So when they're activated by the control center, they're going to oppose or negate that original stimulus. Okay. Negative feedback will minimize change and maintain a fairly narrow limit of variability. Positive feedback does occur occasionally. This is when the stimulus produces a response that exaggerates the change in the original condition. So it makes it much larger. It does not oppose it. And this occurs rarely. Usually we maintain negative feedback to maintain homeostasis, because this definitely throws us out of homeostasis. An example of this would be blood clotting. As a clot starts to form, we release chemicals to accelerate the clot forming process and make more clot. Another example would be in pregnancy. When you go into labor, we release a hormone called oxytocin. This will increase contractions, and as the contraction gets stronger, it causes a bigger release of oxytocin. So they keep getting bigger and bigger and build to a crescendo when you actually deliver the baby. Okay, the introduction to anatomy and physiology has been covered. Now we're going to look at just generalized terms that have to do with anatomy. Your anatomical position would be hands at the side, palms up, facing upward. If you are facing upward laying down, it is called supine, and that's when if you're standing, you're supine facing up in the anatomical position. If you are facing down, it is called prone. Now we have a number of different body regions which you do need to know, and this is just a matter of memorization. The terms where you used to call it your head is now your cephalic region, your thoracic is your chest, antebrachial is the forearm, whereas brachial is the main part, the upper arm. Cervical is your neck. And if you're moving down your arm from brachial to antebrachial, you hit the carpal, which is the wrist, and then the manual, which is the hand. Your abdominal area is what you used to think of as your belly. Your pelvic is your hips. The pubis is the anterior pelvis. Inguinal is your groin area. Your femoral is your thigh, and your crural is the front of the leg, lower leg. Tarsal is the ankle, and pedal is the top of the foot. We are now looking at the back of the person, okay, or dorsal side. And in this case, we have when you're face down in the anatomical position, if you're laying down, you'll be prone. And the regions are the cephalic, which is the head. Cervical is neck. We can see the lumbar, which is the lower back, and the gluteal, which is your butt. Then the sural is the back of the calf, whereas crural on the picture before was the front of the calf area, and plantar is the sole of the foot. We have other terms. The calcaneal is the ankle, which is also referred to as one of the major tendons in the body, is the calcaneus tendon. The abdominal pelvic region is the trunk of the body, and this is where you'll contain most of your organs. Clinicians will divide that area into 4 regions: the right upper quadrant and the left upper quadrant, the right lower and the left lower quadrant. And then when you go to a clinician, such as a doctor, if you complain of area of problem in one part of the body, they could identify which organs would be found in that quadrant. Anatomists will divide the abdominal pelvic region into 9 different regions. In the very top, we have the right and left hypochondriac region. Hypo means below, and chondroid refers to cartilage of the lungs. And then we have the right and left lumbar region. Lumbar, if you remember, is the lower back. So that comes around, that's the middle section. And then we have a right and left inguinal region. The inguinal area is your groin. And then going down the center, we have at the very top the epigastric region. Epi means above, and gastric is referring to the stomach. The umbilical region, where your umbilical cord was attached, and what you have left is your belly button. And then below that is the hypogastric region. Hypo means below the stomach region. With directional references, we are going to reference something in terms of where the other part is located. So if we look at anterior, we're talking about something being in front of. So your anterior side, same thing as the ventral side, is the belly side. But we'll say, oh, well, the heart is anterior to the spinal cord. Okay? Posterior is going to be towards the back, or dorsal, means the same thing. And we can say that your spinal cord is dorsal or posterior to the heart. And then we have cranial or cephalic, which means towards the head, and caudal, which means towards the tail end. We'll see this more in animals such as dogs that are actually walking on 4 legs, and you can really see the cephalic and the caudal end. And then we have superior, which means above, and inferior, which means below. So if I say my nose is superior to my chin, it means it's above it. My chin is inferior to my nose. Continuation of directional references. We have medial, which is toward the central of the body, in the center of the body, versus lateral, which is away from the center, or peripheral to the body. And then we have proximal and distal. Now these two terms are going to refer to the point of attachment of a limb, your arm or your leg. So proximal is going to be closer to the point of attachment where the limb attaches to the axial skeleton, and distal will be farther away from the point of attachment. So if you look at your shoulder, you can say your shoulder is definitely proximal relative to the elbow. But if the elbow, it may be proximal relative to the wrist, or it can be distal relative to the shoulder. So everything is based upon a comparison with another part of the body. And then superficial is at the surface of the body, and deep is farther from the surface. So if you have a superficial cut, it is a small scratch. A deep cut might be like a knife wound that goes much deeper. Your planes of section are how the body or the organ is going to be cut. It can be cut in 3 different ways when you're looking at and studying the organ. A frontal or coronal plane is going to be parallel to the long axis of the body and divide the body into anterior and posterior sections. So your front will be divided from the back of the body. A sagittal plane is going to be parallel to the long axis of the body and will divide you into right and left sections. So it can go down right the middle and cut your nose in half, and you'll have exactly equal mirror images of right and left sides. Or it can be moved over either right or left and make still right section, but it won't be exactly mirror image. And then the transverse plane is perpendicular to the long axis. It's more like a cross section. So it goes across and divides the superior from the inferior sections of the body. Your body cavities are going to house all your vital organs, and they function to protect the organs as well as to allow change in size and shape of the organ. When your heart beats, it gets larger, then it gets smaller. When your stomach fills up with food, it gets larger. So there's got to be some movement and room for those organs, and that is found in the body cavity. We have 2 major body cavity divisions. We have the dorsal body cavity. Remember, dorsal is the back or posterior. And this is going to be divided to 2 smaller cavities. Your cranial cavity will house your brain, this is your skull, and your spinal or vertebral cavity will house the spinal cord. The ventral body cavity towards the front or anterior portion of the body is going to be divided by the diaphragm, which is a muscle, into 2 smaller cavities. We're going to have the thoracic cavity, which is up on the top, and this will house your heart and your lungs. And they will be found in even smaller cavities within the thoracic cavity, called the pericardial cavity, which houses the heart, and the pleural cavities. There are 2 of these to house the right and the left lungs. Below the muscle, the diaphragm, we will find the abdominal pelvic cavity, and this will house all of your viscera, which is just a fancy word for guts. This is where you're going to find your stomach and your intestines and your reproductive organs and your urinary bladder are all going to be found in this region. Organs in the ventral cavity are also called the viscera. Viscera is just a fancy word for guts. And they are surrounded by serous membranes called serosa. These are going to be membranes that have two different layers that are going to surround the organ itself, plus line the cavity that the organ is found in, so that there's protection. And between those two will be an airspace or a fluid layer to allow those two membranes to rub together yet protect the organ and the body cavity itself. The organ is surrounded by the visceral serosa, viscera, meaning guts, and the cavity itself will be lined by the parietal serosa, and they're going to provide protection. Now we have within that serosa, we have different ones. In the thoracic cavity, we have the right and left pleural cavities, which both contain lungs. So the serosa for the pleural cavities is called the pleura. The visceral pleura will cover the lungs, and the parietal pleura will line the cavities the lungs are found in. The pericardial cavity contains the heart, and the serosa is called the pericardium. The visceral pericardium will cover the heart, and the parietal pericardium will line the cavities. In the thoracic cavity, we have the pleural cavities for the lungs, the pericardial cavity, which houses the heart, and we also have the mediastinum. This is going to be a division between the pleural cavities, and this area between the two pleural cavities, the two lung cavities, is going to contain the pericardial cavity with the heart in it, as well as running through this area will be found the esophagus, the trachea, and the thymus. In the abdominal pelvic cavity, we're going to find most of the organs, and they are going to be surrounded by what's called the peritoneal cavity. Anything contained in the peritoneum will be found in that area. The peritoneum is the serosa, the membrane of the peritoneal cavity. Some organs are going to lie outside the peritoneum, and these will be called retroperitoneal organs. Within the abdominal cavity, we're going to have in the peritoneal area, in the peritoneum, the liver, the stomach, small intestines, most of the large intestines. Retroperitoneal will be the kidneys. They will be outside of the membrane, as well as the pancreas. In the pelvic cavity, which is a little bit below the abdominal area, in the peritoneal membrane, we will find the superior urinary bladder, ovaries, and uterus. Retroperitoneal, we will find the lower part of the large intestine, the lower part of the urinary bladder, and some of the reproductive organs.